You know, people like in bands, they go, you know, when we started, we only played for like 10 people or whatever, like, and then they got big. But that was our life for almost 10 years. It was playing really, really small shows where we would say, hey, hello, thank you guys. If anyone knows where we can sleep tonight, that would be great. Please come see us after the show, like begging for a place to stay. Yeah. And it was such an adventure. You know, we were in our 20s and it wasn't a bum out at all. It was cool.
Coming to London, you know, I was looking yesterday and 95 and 97, you played at the Brixton Academy, which has now just come back after a break off. And it was £7 for both of those shows.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah. What do you remember of those times?
Brixton was great. It seemed like Brixton was kind of like, it felt like the ultimate. That was the top, you know, and of course now, you know, the big places are the O2 or Wembley or whatever, right? But back then Brixton was like as good as it could get, right? And it's such a famous and classic venue, and all the bands played there and stuff. So it was really cool to be part of that.
And being from the West Coast, or just being from the States, bands like the Clash and the Pistols and Sham 69, it's legendary.
Yeah,
and it's legendary even if you're from London.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You know, I still think it's great. I'll walk past the place and I'll be like, oh, I've read that the Clash played there.
Yeah.
And now it's like a bingo hall or something.
It certainly felt like that to us.
Yeah. Do you remember what you did in the daytimes where you visited? Oh
gosh. I mean, at first, you know, you walk around as much as you can. You know, it's always a little bit tough on tour. You don't really have a lot of time to do that. And you're also thinking about the show. You want the show to be good. You want to make sure you're kind of rested and stuff. But, you know, just walking around Piccadilly and stuff. Yeah. Chasing the pigeons.
And it's 30 years earlier this year since Smash came out.
Yeah.
It was around that period of time.
Yeah.
I often wonder, because there's been a couple of interviews with Fat Mike around the time of the early 90s, and you were making your own record labels. And Nitro Records came, you know, sort of a few years after that. And I often wonder, you hear about bands and scenes, right, and groups of friends. Who were you tightest with back then?
Back then, I mean, we'd become part of this Epitaph family, I guess, right? You know, it was started, of course, by Brett and Bad Religion. They were the kings of the label, right? And they sold the most records, and they were the most popular. And that was really fun to watch and to see and stuff. But then all of a sudden, there was this new generation of bands that he had signed it, that were coming up, and it was us and Pennywise and Rancid and NoFX, were really the kind of the main four and stuff. So we started becoming more close during that time because of that. In fact, I think Epitaph arranged for us to go on tour with NoFX our first time in Europe. So that was really cool, getting to see, because at that point, NoFX was way ahead of us. They were coming to Europe regularly and were selling out these big clubs, and it was really cool just to be a part of that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's something new. When something's new and it's happening in front of you.
Yeah.
Did it feel like a moment?
It did. That was a real moment. We had put out Ignition. It was before Smash. And we were, you know, lucky enough to get on their bus, but like there wasn't even enough bunks for everybody. So one guy in our band each night had to sleep in the aisle. That's just how it was back then. But it was such an adventure, you know. I think maybe people forget that when you start in a band, like you're not thinking like one day I'm going to make it, or you shouldn't be, right? I remember this quote. It was by David Lee Roth. I love David Lee Roth, so it's not a slag at all. But he was saying how he'd be hucking his gear and putting his amp on top of his car or whatever, and go, one day I'm going to make it. And it's like, no, man, it wasn't like that at all. It was just like, this is a blast. This is so cool. You know, like, I can't believe we're actually in a band going to Europe right now. This is incredible.
And you were industrious, making your own record labels and like tour managing yourself, working it out for yourself. I think that's something that people don't really talk so much about, that I'm massively interested in, is that you had to be smart really to work it out. I guess so. I mean, it wasn't like people think of it as very virtuous in a way, like, oh, you did it all yourselves. It was really out of necessity. Like there was no one was going to help us. No one was going to sign us or pay for our recording. We had to do all that ourselves. We had to find our own studio or producer. We had to make our own t-shirts and figure all that stuff out. And it's just what you had to do in order to be a band. Were you the guy that would pick up the phone? Oh yeah. And make it happen? I made a lot of calls. Yeah, you got to keep on knocking on doors, man, for sure, man. I remember calling this club in LA. It was a famous punk club. It was called the Anti-Club, and trying to get booked there. And this was like when punk was not happening. It was very much a metal scene, a glam metal scene back then. And she just kind of said,
punk's not really happening. We're not really booking your kind of bands, And I'm like, well, this is the anti-club. What are you talking about? But there was a lot of that for sure.
Did you expect for it to blow up with Smash?
Oh, no, not at all. No, that was a real shock. Even after we put out Ignition, it kind of like it sold. I mean, we were stoked that it sold whatever it was, 16,000. It sold 10,000, I think, and then climbed slowly up to like maybe 16,000 over the next year. And we thought, okay, this is good. Maybe if we do another record, maybe it could sell maybe 30. I don't know, but the biggest band at the time was Bad Religion, and they were selling maybe 200,000 or something like that, which was just insane to us. But anyway, that seemed to be like the ceiling of how far we thought that it could go.
And then Smash really, really did that. And it's common knowledge that Smash is the number one selling independent album of all time, even today.
I know. Isn't that amazing? I know. We're so stoked about that. And because no one sells records anymore, I think that record will stand. I think.
Were you asking Brett Guritz for advice? I mean, I think a lot about how if you can ask for advice, no matter what you're doing. I mean, we talk about being in bands here, but even anyone doing any kind of role, when you can ask your peer or a mentor, if you're lucky to have one, for advice, then that's such a trick. That's a superpower.
Yeah, no, he was definitely available to us. And I used to speak with him a lot. His whole thing was like, you got to keep on putting stuff out quickly. Like, we just came out with Ignition. He's like, are you writing songs? You got to be writing songs for the next record. And Bad Religion did a lot of songs in quick succession back then. And I think that was kind of part of their mantra or whatever. But he was really anxious for us to keep on going quickly. Yeah.
And starting Nitro Records, do you remember the kernel of that idea? And was it, what it looks like to maybe fans or someone like me? It's like, oh, you want to put out your own records because that's the way you do it. Why would you give your rights away?
Oh, okay. I mean, I can talk a little bit about that story if you want. I mean, we knew we wanted to be on Epitaph, and it's not easy as a band. You're trying to get someone's attention, and please sign us or whatever. And visited with them, and I think Brett came to a show, and I followed up. I called him, and he said, "Hey man, I love you guys, but I'm not going to sign you." And that was after our first album, which we released on a different label, independent label. I thought, okay. And then we had an opportunity to record for a compilation, and they said they would finance it at West Beach Studios, which was Brett's studio. And I thought, well, this is great. This is another chance to get in front of the guy, because I really believe that Epitaph was the best label for us, for sure at the time. They're really doing something, really going somewhere. So anyway, we did that, and then they said, hey, if you want, why don't you demo a couple more songs or something like that. So, but I actually walked the demo into their office on Santa Monica Boulevard, and there was only like 4 people there, and gave it to the guy, Jeff. And there was a message on my machine that night, said, dude, it was Session was on the demo, and a couple other songs. And he said, we love it. Call me back. We got to sign you guys. So it was really incredible, but there was a lot of persistence in getting there for sure. After that came out, and I was anxious for the record to do as well as it could, I said, can I come into the office and help? And they're like, sure, come on in. And so they would have me come in, and I was calling college radio stations and stuff, basically from their dad. Yeah. And I remember at the time, Brett offered me a job. He goes, you want to work here? And I'm like, oh, I'd like to. I mean, thank you. I'm very flattered, but I got my band to promote and stuff. But yeah, it kind of goes back to that DIY thing, right?
That's a great story.
Just a few people in the office.
I think it's, again, easy to forget as a fan that it's people making this happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a very small operation. And I see them in the warehouse, and they're like boxing up records and sending them out. And like some of them are doing better than others. And they're like, we just can't believe this Pennywise record. Like, we just can't press it fast enough. Like, it's just flying off the shelves. So it was from that I thought, oh, I see how this works. You can do it with a handful of people, and wow, maybe I could start a label too. And of course, it's not a novel idea. Of course, Brett started Epitaph, Jello Biafra started Alternative Tentacles, Ian McKay started Discord, all that stuff. So it wasn't a stretch for a guy in a band to start a label necessarily, but I felt like having the experience of being in Epitaph gave me the confidence that I could start it.
Yeah. How did you, when I think of Pennywise, I think of Fletch and how he drinks from a Pringles can.
He does?
He makes his own cocktail.
He does, yes.
Tours with that. And I think, man, some of those guys are hard asses.
Yeah.
Some of those guys, probably would, I don't know, take the piss out of me for having long hair, maybe, or you know what I mean, take jabs at you. How did you find yourself kind of socially in that dynamic?
Fletcher's a very interesting guy in that he is the most loyal guy you'll ever meet. He will go down to the mat for you if you're on his side. But you have to get past his hazing, basically, is what it was. Right. And so when we first met them, like I said, they were selling a lot of records and we weren't. And he had this thing where he would fuck with you for sure. He would mess with you. God forbid you ever pass out from drinking. He will do something.
He'll draw on you.
Yeah. But we became very close, and we're very close now. I just saw him at a TSOL show 2 weeks ago, and he wasn't drinking out of a Pringles can, but I walked up to him and he handed me a tequila.
It's great how these bands, there's a sort of cyclical nature of these bands. Some bands will go away for a couple of years and come back, and seemingly now a lot of bands that were existing in the early noughties or even the 90s take a break, come back even bigger, playing to more people.
I know, that's shocking, right? I remember doing Reading several times and going, oh, I can't believe we're still here. It had been like 5 years since Smash, like, wow, when is this going to be over? And it's always interesting to see that trajectory of, like, there's certain bands that can stick around forever, if it's the Rolling Stones or Kiss or whatever. And then a lot of bands drop off, and like, how do you stay going and keep it alive? But, when you're talking about Fletcher, I think that we need people like Fletcher in the world. He is such a character, but he's like the real deal, right? Mm-hmm. Him or Fat Mike or whatever, like they're larger than life, but that's what's fun about being in a band.
What do you think's kept you relevant, not only to other people, but to yourself?
The word relevant troubles me a little bit.
I mean, same. I felt a bit icky saying that. But I mean, in the kind of, that's what other people think of relevant. I mean, what keeps you excited about what you're doing, I suppose, and maintain and sustain?
It sounds self-important in a way, right? But I mean, we are still here, so it continues to connect in some way, I guess, right? I think the fact that it's simple, I mean, that was the joy of punk rock that I loved about bands like the Ramones, is that it was simple, it was easy to understand, it was something that you could relate to. And I feel like what I've tried to do in songwriting is write songs that people can relate to lyrically. It's almost like, a song like Self-Esteem. I want the audience to feel like they're in on the joke. Like, yep, I get it. Yep. Or Pretty Fly. I know that guy, make them feel like they're part of what you're talking about.
It was, I have to be honest, it was probably 5 years where I didn't listen to Smash, or I didn't hear the song Self-Esteem. I listened to it a couple of years back, and it was more relevant to me now, or 2 years ago, than it was 15 years ago.
Isn't that funny? And how old are you?
33.
Okay. I mean, writing Self-Esteem, I always say that when you can write a song in first person, but it doesn't mean that it's autobiographical, right? And for that song, for sure, I mean, I relate to those feelings for sure, and I've been there, but that was almost like a composite of different people. Like I knew, the booty call, going to someone's house late at night, knocks on my door, drunk again, ready to score. But that was actually a guy going to a girl's house of someone that I knew. So I kind of drew from these experiences and pieced together this sort of character.
I suppose you've got more to write from if you're writing about people, composite, like you say, people around you and not just yourself. You're going to have more material.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I've always been kind of an observer.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just watching what's going on, and it's fascinating to watch what people do, right? When I bring my friends to the shows and they come and they sit on the stage and they watch, and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never experienced a show like this, because I'm watching the audience, as much as I'm watching you guys. And it's true that there are a million stories going on in front of this person's drunk, this person's crying for whatever reason, or these guys are getting in a fight, or they're fighting for their elbow room in the front and all that stuff. And you can see all this going on, and that's part of why shows never cease to be really fun.
There's something amazing about so many people coming together for a shared purpose, to see a band, to see a football team, to see a soccer team.
People ask a lot, do you like the small shows or the big shows? And I like them both in different ways. The small shows are very intimate. You feel like you're just in a room with someone, and that's great. And the big shows have this insane energy that comes from so many people moving at the same time. And I think that the challenge with the big shows is to try to make them feel like it's still a club show. You know, how do you keep it? I've been using the word conversational almost lately. Like, let's just stop and talk to them for a minute, right? And not just be fist pumping for an hour.
Yeah. And you can do both.
I'll resort to that if I need to.
What's your focal point of these big shows? Where do you find yourself looking or paying attention to, or even thinking about?
Toward the front usually. Yeah. Cause they're the ones that I can see their eyes and stuff, you know. Yeah. You look in the back, it's kind of hard to see. But when you get them moving and they're going up and down, then you know you got it.
Have you noticed playing the songs off Supercharged that there's an immediate reaction?
There is, yeah. That's always, it's an exciting thing, and it's a little bit of a scary thing because you want the new song to go over. Of course, you know, I think if you're really into the idea of being in a band, you don't just want to go out and play your old songs over and over again. You want to keep on creating. That's why you started the band in the first place. And so you want those new songs to resonate with the crowd. And sometimes it takes a while. You know, I remember some of our biggest songs, playing them for the first time in 1998 or whatever, and it was kind of like they're watching. They were into it, but you know, they don't know it yet. Yeah. So that's always a little weird. But on this record, I feel like we've been playing Make It All Right and Light It Up, and they're going over better for first time plays than anything.
The thing that strikes me about Supercharged is how fast it is at the end and the start, and in the middle it has such a kind of perfect rock. I want to say swing groove.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, this record, we wanted to make it kind of direct, I guess, is a good way of saying it. We wanted it to be high energy and just kind of right down the middle, I guess. It was kind of the idea. There have been times in our career where I felt like we needed to expand widen our circle of what we can do musically. Like I feel like after Smash, that was an important time because we couldn't just deliver Smash Part 2, or people would just say, okay. We had to make Ixnay that had different songs like Gone Away and stuff like that in it. And we did that a little bit on the last record, Let the Bad Times Roll. But we felt like this time, it's like, you know, let's just stick to what we're good at and just put a record out that way.
Your Noodles guitar sound is iconic.
No, thank you.
And I think it's going to make it has for so long has made so many people want to learn to play guitar and in the future, because it's almost like the PV amp sound. You could kind of start creating that sound. You can start creating that sound in your bedroom.
Yeah. If you're starting on a guitar, this is what I would say. Get a couple amps if you can at the same time. If you're playing out of two different amps simultaneously, you split it. You get the best of both. Yeah. One amp can be really, you could say like it could be like a PV or whatever, a Mesa Boogie, and something could be really low, like a Diesel or something like that. And that's really good. But when I started playing guitar, you know, I bought a book and it had like scales and practicing. And I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like, I don't want to sit here and fucking do that. That's lame. I want to learn this Ramon song.
Yeah.
You know, so what I would do is I would sit on my bed in my bedroom and play the records back at this time. And I would try to figure out what they were doing by just sitting on the edge of the bed and with the guitar and trying to match the notes and stuff. Yeah. So it's really all these bands that taught me how to play guitar. It was the Adolescents and TSOL and the Ramones and the Sex Pistols.
That's awesome. That's good. That's a great picture of you sitting along those records and working it out.
Yeah. In fact, I realized as I was learning that, wow, this is actually all about bar chords. And I wasn't really sure how to play a bar chord.
Yeah. Because you start off with the first 3 strings and then you realize you could do that.
Yeah. I was having fucking a hell of a time getting the bar chord thing down, right? And then I was, again, looking at these records of the bands that I loved. And I turned over this TSOL record, Dance With Me, that's like my favorite record of all time. And I saw Ron Emery, the guitar player, playing it. He was playing a bar chord. But what he did is he put the thumb on the back. He pressed his thumb in the back of the neck. And that's how he got his fingers to stick on the bar. And I hadn't figured that out yet. And I'm like, oh, that's how you play a bar chord. So that's what I mean when I say literally, these bands taught me how to play guitar.
So you have a PhD in microbiology, for anyone who doesn't know.
It's molecular biology, not to correct you.
Molecular biology. No, please do correct me. I'm out of my depth from the first second of talking about this. I mean, how do you describe what you've done? And you've done research that goes towards HIV.
Yes.
How would you know, when you meet someone for the first time, or you're at a dinner party or you're at the bar or whatever, how do you do, what's the thing that you get excited most about of the work that you've done there?
Oh, well, I mean, it's really fascinating stuff. It's interesting, but it's hard to talk about with anybody because you immediately go so far into the weeds that it's like, so to try to do it from a broad perspective, I've been interested in viruses for a long time. Molecular biology is kind of like what you might describe as biotech, I guess. And there's a lot of different ways you can do biotech, but what I've been interested in is the study of viruses and virology, because of course, it's such a big part of human disease and infectious disease. And we've made great strides. HIV is a particularly interesting virus to me, just in terms of its mechanics. I know that sounds kind of funny, but it's a very complex and complicated virus. I'm fascinated by how a virus can infect you and basically take over your cell, make your cell shut down and make more viruses, and then it explodes the cell. Like, that's kind of a very rough life cycle of the virus and stuff. And I'm like, wow, it's so evil, right? Like, we have to stop this.
Yeah, it's like, it's villainous.
And it's really, it's amazing and cool in its evil way, right? And like, I want to do something about this. HIV is particularly rough because what it does is it goes into the cell and it actually doesn't just explode the cell right away. It hides in your DNA. It inserts its own DNA into your DNA, and then it just lays there for sometimes 5 or 10 years, and then slowly starts just putting out little viruses one at a time and stuff. And that's why people are afflicted for their lifetime with HIV, because it goes into your DNA, it doesn't come out. So anyway, that kind of stuff is fascinating to me, and I wanted to see if I could, with my research, just make some kind of contribution. I'm certainly not going to claim to cure HIV or anything like that, but I think by all of our our little efforts, we'll hopefully get this thing under control. You
have to work methodically when you're doing something like that, when you're working like that. Do you think that have you been able to put the kind of methodological sort of brain that you put into science into songwriting and into being a band?
Yeah, I know it seems strange on the outside, like these seem like polar opposites. How can you do science and music at the same time? And they are connected to me. I'm not sure exactly how to explain it, but I think there is almost a math to it in a way. I think you can look at songs kind of visually in a way. You can see where the chorus goes and the verse goes and how this goes around 4 times and that sort of thing.
And imagery. I mean, you talking about how the cells would explode. This is language that's really visual.
Yeah.
And it's active.
Yeah. I think I see music visually in a way. You kind of look at it as it's going back and forth. And of course, anyone who knows Pro Tools now, you look at things like that. Mm-hmm. Our drummer, Brandon, he's such a great drummer. And he said he got started by playing Drum Hero and Guitar Hero because the songs were coming through visually, and he just had to match the kick patterns and stuff like that. So there is a visual side of it for sure.
Because you've done so much, you fly a plane that's got an anarchy symbol on the back wing. Yes. You've made your own hot sauce, Gringo Bandito, excellent tasting hot sauce. You've done so much, and this show's called 101 Part-Time Jobs. How do you think that you've been able to fit everything in? Right.
I mean, that's a good way of putting it, actually. These are all kind of like part-time jobs, right? Like, I'm interested in making hot sauce, but it's a part-time thing. I don't think I could sit at my desk all day just doing hot sauce, right? But it's rad. It's really cool. I like doing it. I want to see if I can make this thing go and reach people and stuff. And so maybe in a way that's kind of similar to the band. Like, I like starting brands or things and seeing if I can make them grow, I guess. Right. But yeah, it's a matter of just, you got to devote a certain chunk of time to one thing, and then you switch gears and go to another thing.
You could write a book. I think I was talking to a friend yesterday. I'm speaking to Dexter Holland tomorrow. I'm doing all this research of things that I've learned over the years being a fan and sort of doing the extra research as well. I'm like, oh, damn, this guy could write a book, and I'd want to read it.
Maybe I should write a book. I don't know. We've talked about stuff like that over the years. Maybe I just can't quite get my head around that at this point. Like we talked about back in the day, VH1 in the US had this thing called Behind the Music. And
Love it.
Yeah, it's great, right? Oh my gosh. As soon as it starts, whatever band it is, you're just watching it. Yeah. And they talked about doing it with us. And I'm like, I don't think it's that interesting. I go, we're not like, we didn't grow up poor. We certainly weren't rich, but we're like middle class. And then we started a band and it took 10 years and then everything ended up kind of okay. You know, like there's no rehab, nobody died, you know, none of that kind of stuff. You know, as we get older, maybe there's more of a story now.
You brought on Ed Sheeran on stage the other day.
Yeah.
Conspiracy One was the first album that he brought. I mean, that must have been very cool.
Can you believe that? That was actually Noodle's idea. He had heard that Ed Sheeran was a fan, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. There's no way. This guy's he's a pop guy, right? And amazing songwriter and everything, but I wouldn't have never thought that he'd be interested in us. And he's like, dude, I heard one of our albums, Conspiracy of One, was his first record. And so we reached out to him and said, we're playing the same festival in California. Would you like to come out and play a song? And he's like, I'd love to. He chose the song. It was A Million Miles Away, which is off of Conspiracy of One. So when we had him back, we came back in the trailer dressing room and we strummed it out once, and it was, you know, perfect right away. And he was actually a really, really lovely guy. He even has a tattoo, as an Offspring skull tattoo, sick. Like right here. He showed us a tattoo and we all cheered and high-fived and like, this is great. Yeah. But yeah, just a lovely guy. If
you didn't know already, he did the sleeping on floors thing for years. He slept on my sister's friend's floor in London because he's from a town of, you know, maybe 2 or 3 hours away. Okay. And he wanted to be a musician. So he was doing open mic nights, playing for free and sleeping on people's floors. He did it the punk rock way.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. I mean, our first tour, we took not even a van. We had a small truck and we made it all the way across the US and back in about a month. And we were playing shows where I remember the smallest one was 6 people. Yeah. You know, people like in bands, they go, you know, when we started, we only played for like 10 people or whatever, like, and then they got big, but that was our life for almost 10 years. It was playing really, really small shows. And we were doing clubs bars, not even clubs, right? Where we would say, hey, hello, thank you guys. If anyone knows where we can sleep tonight, that would be great. Please come see us after the show, like begging for a place to stay. Yeah. And it was such an adventure. You know, we were in our 20s and it wasn't a bum out at all. And, you know, of course I wouldn't want to do that now, but back then it wasn't this bum out. It was cool.
What do you think that was keeping you going? Was it the music? Was it each other?
Yeah, it was exciting and it was new for sure.
And your friends and you're traveling.
Yeah. You know, we started going to shows when we were teenagers and stuff, and there was just an excitement about the show. And to be able to be on the other side of it, being on stage and doing the show, like that's just the best. It's the best high. So, so that's what kept us going, is the shows.
Yeah. Awesome. Dexter, Supercharged is a killer record. And can I say the humor on it, I really appreciate. Come to Brazil.
Oh, thank you.
It's funny because that's the Instagram comment. But even more than that, it's like funny for someone like me in London, is that I'm thrilled. I'm stoked on the idea of so many thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in Rio de Janeiro singing along to that beat, you know, and then you got the Olays at the end, the bouncing soul Olays.
We hope so, right? Of course, you're talking about almost a meme or whatever on Instagram. Everybody says, they all say, come to Brazil. And it started to become a joke with us because anything we posted, they would just say, come to Brazil. It would be like, happy birthday noodles, come to Brazil, you know? You could even say, we're coming to Brazil, and they would say, come to Brazil. It was such a joke. We thought, we got to write a song about this. And we thought, well, surely someone must have picked up on this already. But as far as I know, no one's written a song called Come to Brazil yet. And so it really started with just the title. Usually music goes the other way. You write music and then you figure out what words or theme will fit into that. But this just started with the title, and it's like, okay, well, let's do a clean sheet design of a song called Come to Brazil. What would it be like? You know, so it had to have like almost a speed metal verse because they love that down there. And then a very super anthemic chorus, you know, a picture of a football stadium or something. Yeah. And then just tack ole, ole, ole on the end. But this is completely a thought experiment at this point. Like, I don't know if it's going to go over. It's our American interpretation of what we think Brazilians are going to like in a song. But it remains to be seen, I guess. We'll see how it goes over.
I put you on the spot here a little bit, but are there any new bands that you've been really into?
Electric Callboy. Yeah. German band. I guess they call it technocore. You know, what's so fun about music now, like no one's inventing new genres like the way reggae came about or whatever, but like, but people are mixing different stuff together, right? Mm-hmm. So this song is like, it sounds techno at the beginning and then it goes into a hardcore and then it has like the most pop top 40 chorus you could imagine. And then he's screaming and it's hilarious. And they've got a really good sense of humor.
Awesome. Dexter, 101 part-time jobs. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
That was lovely. Thank you.
I've got one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Could you rate your albums from your personal favorite?
Rate them. Okay. Well, they say with your children, you're supposed to love them all equally, but you don't. No, I'm just...
I mean, is that something you consider? And I guess it can go into the sound of them, or like the way you felt about them, or where you were personally at that time.
Yeah.
The lyrical content.
I mean, you're always trying to develop as a person and as an artist. So you're moving on from where you were. And sometimes you look back on something you did in the past and go, well, actually, that was really good. I did an interview once in Poland where this guy he wanted me to sign his CD covers, and he had Smash, Ixnay, and Americana. And he goes, this is the Holy Trinity. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting idea. Okay, I like that. But those albums are, of course, very near and dear to us. I think there was something about that. And I think that on this record in particular, we tried to go back to that a little bit and rediscover the energy and just the, I don't know what the word is, the effort that went into all of that. You know, I'm just so excited to be putting this out in October, and we want to get out there and tour the world and elsewhere, as they say in Spinal Tap. But more than any record I can remember, like, I want to play all these songs. Nowadays, bands too often use a new album as an excuse to go on tour, right? Because they go, well, no one's going to buy it anyway. But we're really super into this. Like, we put our heart and soul 100% into this record, and can't wait to share it with everybody.
Yeah, awesome. And just to end with, I mean, Spinal Tap, one of the beautiful things about that film is the mistakes that happen, right? Is the wrong footings, is the confusing feet with inches, for example, with the Stonehenge replica. And I, you know, want to keep it lighthearted and like funny things that you maybe at the time were difficult, but now you can look back on and laugh.
Yes.
What are the biggest fuck ups that you or the Offspring have made?
Yeah. There was a point in the 90s where we watched Spinal Tap on the bus every night for like 2 months. And the reason is because it's really true. Like, that stuff really does happen. Like, we've gotten lost backstage trying to find the stage, you know, all that stuff, you know, when she says, I was supposed to be the puppet show and Spinal Tap, not the other way around. Like, that kind of stuff has totally happened. But, oh gosh, I don't know. We once played a show in a co-op where it was a kitchen, and they said, you can play the lunch hour. This is in Berkeley. We thought we're showing up to some cool punk show. And instead they had their trays out, and we played to the clinking of silverware, you know. Yeah. Thinking about that story, I am really proud of where we've gotten to, because we really did do it. Like, there's nothing to hide. There's no, we didn't get a leg up when we shouldn't have. Like, we really started from nothing and got to here just based on our own efforts. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm proud of this record.
Cheers for watching. This is 101 Part-Time Jobs. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and all podcast apps. We've done interviews with Aurora, Kneecap, Idols, Lauren Maybury of Churches, and loads more. So tap into 101 Part-Time Jobs on Spotify, Apple, and all podcast apps.